Heath Manning, Director of Policy at Independent Women's Voice, and I'm here for a very special Facebook Live interview. Today's an exciting day for Independent Women's Voice because we are welcoming a new president. So I'm joined on Facebook Live by Tammy Bruce, who is a well-known policy analyst and commentator, radio host, author, and really needs no introduction. Tammy, we're so glad to have you with us and happy to kick this conversation off, talking a little bit about Independent Women's Voice. We are on a mission to advance policy that's not just well-intended, but actually provides good results for women and families, increasing their freedom, choices, and opportunity. Yeah. So Tammy, let's kick this off. I want to ask you, first of all, someone with your talents and expertise and experience could do a lot of different roles, and you do wear a lot of different hats, but why IWV? Why are you joining us as president? What excites you about this new role?
First of all, I want to thank you for having me, and also for being so warm and generous. I've coming into an entity that, as you've described, is already successful, is got an extraordinary brand. You guys have a not just a grasp on what it is you want to accomplish, but there's a passion and understanding of the issues that is rare when it comes to not policy, politics, organizing, etc. So it's fabulous to be here. But also, by the way, I'm in the Fox Business green room, so you will likely see Charles Payne at some point coming in to get his hat, which I've confiscated. So that'll happen in the middle of this. But I was the president of the National Organization for Women in Los Angeles for 8 years. I sat on the National Board of Directors. My excuse is I was young. I was in my 20s and my 30s. But it was not surprising, though, because my commitment as an authentic feminist is, and my goal has always been to help create an environment where women could make the choices that best suited them. My idea was that it was about a multitude of doors that our job was to unlock, so that whether you wanted to be a lawyer or the stay-at-home mom or a teacher or somebody who worked at the Peace Corps or an activist, whatever you wanted to do, you'd be a politician or an astronaut, that every possibility was open for us. And so that's been my goal for, ever since I've gone into, in that instance, left-wing organizing, and dealing with issues also of violence against women, domestic violence, child care issues, financial equity, et cetera, because we can't be free unless we're financially free. And there's some financial opportunities. So when I left now, having determined that, in fact, that was a fraud, the left-wing movement was using feminism as an excuse to be able to move the left-wing agenda. And is that Charles Payne standing there by the door? I warned the Facebook Live world that Charles Payne was going to come in here to get his hat. So here he is. Say hi, right down here.
Hey,
you
I was singing so long. How you doing?
Look at me. I'm hosting right now. You're usually the host. We need you to get on this conversation.
Well, what are we talking about? Tariffs? The market?
We're talking about Tammy Bruce. That's the headline today. Yes.
That is the headline.
There you go.
A great choice. A great choice.
Thank you. Wow. An endorsement from Charles.
All right.
You're a doll.
I'll see you guys later. Ladies, I'll see you later.
Have a great night, dear.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks,
So
Charles.
my leaving the left stemmed from the fact that there was a realization that it was a fraud, that my goal was to organize us into not needing to exist, that we would have success. And then it became apparent, a series of events became apparent to me that was not the goal of leadership on the left. It was to perpetuate a level of victimhood to where they would always be needed. When I was working, by the way, with Now, always on the side was this irritant of, that conservative women's group. And the IWV, the IWF became apparent to me as I went back into business and did some other things after having left the left, went into talk radio, et cetera, and realized and noticed that the conservative ideal, in fact, separate from, let's say, issues of religion and other issues on politics, but the overarching conservative ideal really addressed my issues of being, left alone by the government, of being able to live the life that best suited me, issues of personal responsibility, access to opportunity. And it was like, it was an epiphany about, I want some success. I want women to be successful. And so those are the issues that touch on that. So I became kind of Ronin for a while, the unattached to any kind of leadership for, gosh, maybe 18 years now. And but being able to understand my own conservatism more, being able to recognize who's making a difference. And over the years, at one point, a little while ago, met Heather Higgins, and noticed the nature of a kind of work style and accomplishment that does not exist on the left. It was a real understanding of the issues, but not only understanding the issues that existed, but doing work that changed the parameters of what was possible, and being smart about it, realizing the humanity that was underneath those issues, and was lucky enough to meet her, become friends. I've moved to New York a few years ago, and it became incredibly apparent the value and the importance of groups like the IWF and the IWV in changing the narrative and making the difference. Not even just discussing what other people were doing, but a collection of women and some men with great vision actually deciding that you could make a difference, and working on that, no matter who was in the White House. That it wasn't about, because I'm not a Republican, but it was about what is going to move American women forward within just the larger context of that. And so the opportunity came to go on the board, which was thrilling. Met more of the activists and the leadership involved, and it was the antithesis of what I experienced on the left, and it reinforced my belief that if there was going to be a group that could make a difference, that in this time when Americans are ready for new ideas and a new approach, that this was going to be the group that did it. And I wanted to be a part of helping to make that happen.
That's great, Tammy. I'm so glad you mentioned Heather Higgins, because she's been our longtime president and CEO at IWV. She's going to stay on, continue to serve as CEO alongside you as part of our leadership. And I wanted to ask if you wanted to mention, are there any other people or influences that have played a big role in sort of the shaping of your political views? Not everyone can say that they have worked both for NOW and for IWV. That's a pretty unique path that you've taken. So how would you say that you could just sort of tell us more about that turning point in your life?
Well, it's interesting because there's one person, and I've written about him a little bit, I met him when I was on radio in Los Angeles, when I was still the president of NOW in Los Angeles, the author Ray Bradbury. And I kind of grew up as an orphan. My mother was, I grew up during the Carter years. My mother worked 2 part-time jobs in retail, and I'm the product of an affair, so there was no father in the house. And so I was very much always alone. And I turned to books. Books were a world that always waited for me. A voracious reader. I was reading at 3. And the good news is, I don't know how it started, but I got a book of Ray Bradbury short stories. And the fascinating thing about his writing was that his messaging, while not science fiction, but more fantasy, through the stories were messages about morality and our responsibilities as individuals, the creative spark in humanity, and the power that we have and the need to use it properly, and that each individual is dynamic and could make a difference. So that was a messaging that was very important to me, that had a big impact on my life moving forward. I was lucky enough when I first started in radio in 1993 to one of the first things I wanted was to get Ray Bradbury on my show.
Wow.
And he sat down, and I was shocked to find out he was a conservative. But this was what was great and was such a gift for me. There's nobody else I would have listened to seriously other than him on the issues. And I have to say, not just did his work change me, but I've been blessed enough to be able to meet someone like that, and was able to hear an argument that was able to get past my own resistance, having been working on the left and all of that. And so my respect for him, the way he viewed the world was so empowering. And I ended up getting to know him and spending time with him, and just really grateful for that. But he's the one who helped me understand on his perspective, the value and the importance of that worldview and what I could do. He had many daughters and a wife, so it was always surrounded by women. And so it was that kind of powerful point of view. So if I had to point to one person personally, it would be Mr. Bradbury.
Wow.
When it comes to politics, of course, Margaret Thatcher. There's a woman who, now remember, so I grew up without a lot of adult influence, without a nuclear family, without a lot of parameters or structure. And so I grew up actually, yearning for that. I'm a student of history. I like things that have a grasp on tradition, the understanding of the nature of humanity works. And Margaret Thatcher's approach, not only because she was a woman, certainly a powerful woman, but the way she handled herself in public, you knew that she understood what she wanted, a powerful politician, but also and of course her relationship with President Reagan, that opened it up interestingly for me as the nature of what women could do, moving through a man's world, and having that kind of personal commitment and moving the conservative ideal in that fashion. Now, but also, of course, happy to say I voted, first president I could vote for was President Reagan. And of course, the Reagans did that for me as well. So always in an interesting point of view, looking for and appreciating, a family like the Reagan family, the nature of what Mr. and Mrs. Reagan stood for and how they approached life, really informed my worldview in that regard as well. So it's, of course, President Reagan, Margaret Thatcher, and Mr. Bradbury. As a kid, probably my kindergarten teacher, who my very first day of kindergarten, it was challenging because the first thing I noticed when I walked in, they had my name on the board with everyone else's name. And I looked at my Uncle Ed, who was the one who brought me to kindergarten that day, the very first day. I said, Uncle Ed, how did they know I was coming? And it was like the very first sense of, oh, so there's planning and these things work out well. And the teacher came up to me and she got down low at my level and she said, there are many things you don't understand right now, but I'm going to help you understand them. And so I was immediately at ease. And so, the impact of teachers always in my life, and then those personal experiences as well.
Wow, that's fascinating. It makes me want to go stock up our home library full of Ray Bradbury books so that my daughter will be exposed to that.
I would recommend it. And it's great to do because you can start with, his short stories. Right. So you got a little kid who's maybe got an attention issue. You can start that way. And certainly, Fahrenheit 451, The Martian Chronicles, all about the morality of the individual and what we owe society.
Wonderful. Tammy, you mentioned earlier that one of your personal goals in your professional life throughout your life at now at IWV has been really advancing the freedom of women to make their own choices about their lives. So I want to ask you, how do you see that personal mission overlapping with or aligning with our mission at IWV, which also relates strongly to public policy advocacy work? And what goals do you have in mind for the organization as you take leadership as our new president?
Well, I can't tell you how excited I am because I feel that this is at the right time. It fits well here with what I've even learned being independent from any organization. But the issues still remain the same. Look, as women, no matter what our age, we remain concerned about what will happen for the next generation, whether it's your own children, the people you care about. And as we get older, as we age, we have different issues. Young women entering college, the choices they have to make in an ever-changing world. We're in a world now which very well looks like it's preparing for war. How can women make a difference when it comes to the quality of life, ending suffering, and while at the same time having power to control our own lives? So for me, we're still on that same trajectory, and I think that as I think about the issues that concern me, my own life certainly, but then being able to be, as an American, being genuinely independent, having the gift of the access to media, to influence. We have, as American women, an extraordinary responsibility because of the potential of the power that we have. We've got to claim it. And we've got to claim it not in allowing, because this is what I see now as the problem, the left casting women still as victims, putting us all in a position of being vulnerable and reliant on government, taking away ultimately that individual spark and power. You see the damage done in the lies that are perpetrated, like in Hollywood, the use of women literally within that framework, the dynamic of what happens with women in when it comes to the sex trade, MS-13 here in this country, the women raising their children on their own in the urban areas as they're abandoned by leftist leadership. That I want to make sure that women have more choices and that they have the information so that they can make those choices, so that their lives can improve, so that we can move ourselves out of that victim mentality that the left so much wants us in. And that's part of my generation's issue. I came after the first feminist generation, the Gloria Steinems of the world, and I think that we've learned enough to know what now we need to do, and the fact that we do have power, and that small government is a good thing. Having more of our own money is a good thing. That capitalism, the free market. The moment you realize that you can have your children and you can be a single parent, but I want women to be able to choose to what school they send their child to. If they want to send them to a charter school or homeschool them or pay for a private school, I want women to be able to live in a city in the area that they choose to live in, not that they have to live in, and to be in a relationship because they want to, not because they have to be. There'll always be struggles in life, but I've recognized and see and watched proceed the attempt to effectively, perpetually victimize women to where we have no power. This effort, and with the IWV, is exciting because if there is a group that is going to make the difference and change that narrative and change the real lives for women across the board, regardless of party, regardless of skin color, regardless of the economic standing, all of these things matter, these things that make us sisters. The IWV is going to be that organization, and I want to be the one that helps it move further into that framework.
Awesome. We always say at IWF and at IWV that all issues are women's issues. And I think you articulated that very clearly. We don't want to take too much time. We're so glad that listeners and viewers have tuned in on Facebook Live to congratulate us, really congratulating Independent Women's Forum on the addition of this great new president, Tammy Bruce. Tammy, thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thanks for having me.
My questions. And I think it's provided a good opportunity for us to get to know Tammy Bruce a little bit better. So that's
great.
It.
Looking forward to it.
Yep. Tune in again next time for another IWV Facebook Live interview. For now, bye-bye.